Hey guys, Tyler with Meeple Mountain here, bringing you another board game review, this time from our friends at the OP Games. They have given us a review copy of their new title, Mountains Out of Molehills, which is going to set you and up to 3 opponents in the role of a mole at the annual digging competition, where you will be taking on the role of this champion, trying to build the most molehills on all these mountains and score the most points over 6 rounds of play. So grab your shovel, your gloves, and clothes that you don't mind to get a little bit dirty. So let's dig in and learn how to play Mountains Out of Molehills. Mountains Out of Molehills is a card drafting and movement programming game for 2 to 4 players. Here in the illustration we have set up, you'll see a full 4-player game of Mountains Out of Molehills set up. Players will take turns drafting cards from the movement deck every round of play. Mountains Out of Molehills is broken into 6 rounds. In every round, you'll be drafting 4 of the available cards in turn order to build and then program your particular mole's movement around the board in this particular round of play. Movement cards will allow your mole to move forward, change their direction, do a U-turn, move the obstacle rock that's laid out in the middle of the underground board, or even cause some of your towers to topple. And we'll talk about toppling a little bit more in detail here in just a moment. As moles move, they will be putting a corresponding colored molehill on the above ground board based on the color of their particular character. As you develop those throughout the rounds, you're going to be scoring these particular mountains that you'll be making by looking at the bottom-most colored molehill on each particular row. Whoever has the corresponding colored piece of the bottom mountain controls that particular mountain and will score victory points equal to the number of plastic pieces on that particular mountain. The mountains have a max height based on round, which increases from 2 in the first round all the way up to 5 on the final 6th round. Whenever a mountain has more molehills in it than its max capacity allows for that particular round, it will topple, and all of the pieces on that will cascade in a direction of the player's choosing. The interesting and strategic aspect here is that topples can begin to stack, so you can move pieces in a way that strategically opens opportunities for you to gain control of additional mountains, or you can even topple pieces off of the board, returning them to their owner's control, therefore removing points that someone else may score or even control that they may be trying to gain on other mountains. All of this strategy intact comes again back to the cards that you are going to draft and the way that you program your movement. So let's talk a little bit more about that. In a round of Mountains Out of Molehills, each player is going to have 5 cards flipped up, face up, in a row per player. So this would be an illustration of what you would see in a 3-player game. Then, going in turn order, each player is going to set aside and draft a card. These will not be replaced, but will just continuously be drafted and removed until each player has 4 cards in their particular hand. Then players will select the cards order that they want them to be played in and put them face down, and forming a pile of face down 4 cards per player. Then again, in player order, each player will flip and resolve the top card of their particular programmed movement. This is where all of the fun and the shenanigans in Mountains Out of Molehills begins, because once your cards are set, of course, as with programming games, you cannot change the order. So if someone happens to move a rock that would get in your way, you're going to have to pivot and hope that you can make the best out of a bad situation. If you bump into another mole or happen to try and move off of the board, you will lose all of the movement points that that card would grant you. So making sure that your mole is oriented properly and is set up with the right cards to be flexible, yet strategic and get you the points that you need is key to success in Mountains Out of Molehills. It is a really great strategy build here where you have a little bit of flexibility on what you pull and a little bit of luck based on what others take and what is pulled out from the flip. It's just the right balance of deep strategy and luck that makes Mountains Out of Molehills engaging and fun and gives it a lot of replayability. I wanted to take a closer look and give you a few examples of the probably most interesting, important, and complicated aspect in Mountains Out of Molehills, which is the toppling. So again, here we have the overboard that you can see here with its very handy grid so you know where your movement is. Now remember, all of the placement of the molehills is dependent upon where your mole moves on the underground board. Each of these boards have a corresponding and matching grid so that wherever your mole moves, you know that's where you would need to place your corresponding molehill directly above that mole. Anytime a mole moves into a new space, you'll be placing a molehill on the above board. So as a mole would move, you would see additional molehills pop up like so. Now again, as I mentioned, each round has a max cap capacity for your mountain. How many pieces can be placed going upwards until it would topple. Let's say, for instance, that we're working on the first round and we have the max capacity of 2 for each mountain. We see here that a particular player, the orange player, brown player, has placed their third molehill here on this particular tower. That means that this tower is going to topple. Now, how that works is the player who is making the topple, so again, in this case, the brown player, is going to choose the direction that they want this particular mountain to topple over. So all of the pieces, except the very bottom one, are going to fall in a direction, orthogonal direction, of the brown player's choosing. Now, when we're determining score, we're going to look at whoever is at the bottom of a particular mountain. They have control, and they're going to score points equal to the number of pieces on that particular mountain. So for instance, if we have a topple effect here, we have a gray piece and another brown piece. We may see the brown player do a topple effect like this, where they would be placing a gray on top of their own brown and another brown here. That means they went from having control of one tower to now having control of 3, netting them more legal points in this particular round of play. As I mentioned before, the interesting and fun aspect of this is that topples can stack and stagger and continue to build. So for instance, if you had topple effects happening from north to south here, and we had multiple pieces placed, then these topple effects would resolve in the order that they were triggered, and so on and so forth. And you can see some amazing daisy chains that will happen of the toppling effect as these pieces remain from round to round. So by round 6, there are these massive mountains that are all chaining effects together, and the score can change drastically from card play to card play. This is a deceptively intricate and important aspect of Mountains Out of Molehills, where you are thinking and strategizing about how you can make the best play out of these topple effects and recover from maybe some unexpected topple effects that happen from your opponent's plays as well. And that, in a nutshell, is how you play Mountains Out of Molehills. But what did I think about it? I'm glad you asked. Well, I have a few critiques on all the things, so I'll just kind of run through a list here really quickly. First off, from an artistic perspective, I really liked the way that the OP designed and utilized the box. From the art on the outside of the bottom lid, to the way that the inserts are designed to allow these columns to insert, everything about this was intentional and said, here is an experience we want you to have. Now, I am always of the opinion that board games are, at their base, art. They are an experience that the artist, the game designer, has created for you, the gamer, to experience. And I think that this is really thoughtful and taps into that feeling and emotion. And so that was a huge plus to me. From a gameplay perspective, things are tight. The interactions are well balanced. The thoughtfulness of the toppling effect and all of that is really well done. The boards are double-sided, which means that at 2 players, you have a smaller, more truncated board. This is the larger side for the 3 or 4 players, which means the map is positioned well so that you don't have too much room or not enough room. Everything is balanced and tight there. The rounds, being the fact that the mountains have a cap that continues to increase as you go through the rounds, is nice. That becomes a tutorial effect, effectively, for new players so that they can learn without losing so many points that they can't be competitive later. I think it's a really nice ramping effect that helps new gamers and gamers that have played this before kind of have a little bit of a cushion and helps them learn. The card drafting, the programming is all really good. I sometimes struggle with programming games in the sense that I feel like they can be repetitive if you just have a repeatable deck or things like that. This being random, shuffled out, dealt out, is really nice in the fact that everybody is just trying to make the best hand that they can out of the cards that are available or that are left to them on each draft. And so that's a really nice balance that gives me some replayability, and I really enjoyed all of those things. The rulebook, well thought out, short, concise. It gets you what you need. It gets you into the thing that matters, why you're here, right? The game. It's not so long that you have to really drudge through it, and I enjoyed that. Formatting could have been a little different, a little better in a few places, but again, it gets you what you need. It gets you into the game. The game itself plays in a relatively acceptable time frame. 2 players, you could get this done in under an hour. With 3 or more, you're probably looking at an hour, hour and a half with Teach, which isn't terrible. Again, still a nice little experience that you can unpack and enjoy and put away and still have a good chunk of your day left. From a cost perspective, you're looking at $40, $45 here for the most part on this guy, so it's not going to break the bank. I think that's really nice. It means that you can add this to your collection and don't have to make a budget item for it for the month, right? So all of those things are really positives. The toppling effect on the board was really intricate and interesting to me. And I love the way that control on these is based on who's at the bottom. And so there's a lot of changing and shifting things that are happening on the board. They were all really engaging. The only negative statement that I really have on this title is that as you were looking at it, if you go back and look at some of the shots here that I did from the top, you'll see that these boards, while they're beautiful, they have these earthy tones. The lines denoting each grid are incredibly, incredibly muted, and it was really hard to tell exactly where things began and ended on each particular piece of the grid. Because that's so important in the game. Every time your mole moves, remember, you're placing a piece directly above where your mole is, and so I spent a lot of time as I was playing, make sure, all right, A6, all right, if I move here, then it's there. And I wish that there had been a quicker grid so that I could have counted and just calculated where things were a little bit easier than I had to. And so that was a bit of a negative for me. But outside of that, this is a thoughtful, interesting, and intricate game that I really enjoyed the presentation on. So I'm really excited to say that I got to review this, to add this to my collection. And I believe if you're looking for something in that approachable price point that is a drafting management programming game, then Mountains Out of Molehills is one you should check out. I think it might be something you'll really enjoy. And again, I think that it is an experience, an artistic experience that's fun to have and worth keeping in your collection. So all of that to say, I want to thank you for coming to Meeple Mountain for your board game related needs. I hope that you'll continue to come to us for content, to see reviews, and get a feel for what's out there in the board game industry and what's happening that you could look to add to your collection. So I want to thank you for that, and as always, I want to wish you happy gaming. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out some of our other Meeple Mountain content. I promise you won't be disappointed. This is Tyler Williams, signing off.